Hello and welcome back to the Riff, named after the Upper Madison's 50-mile riffle. As we talked about before, from time to time, I'll be giving you the happenings in this valley. Today I'm here with Lindsey Albertson from MSU, and she's going to share with us her salmonfly study.
Yeah.
Welcome, Lindsey.
Thank you very much. Hi, I'm Lindsey Albertson, and I'm an associate professor at Montana State University in the ecology department. I have a PhD in ecology and have been working here in Montana for 10 years now, and on the Madison for about 9 years.
Wow.
Which is really special. So we started in 2016 thinking about describing what salmonfly populations are like on the Madison River, and we also work on our neighboring river, the Gallatin, and found some really interesting things about the timing of the salmonfly hatch and its relationship with water temperature. And so just decided to keep going and keep moving along and thinking about the importance of salmonflies as a food resource for trout and sort of as an iconic species in this region, in its own right too.
Yeah, I love that. And I see you're wearing a salmonfly shirt tonight.
I am very dorky,
but
I
love it.
It's all right.
I dig it. A lot of my listeners will say, Lindsey, what's happening to the salmonfly population? How come we as anglers are noticing a decline?
Mm-hmm. Well, if you're noticing a decline, it's very possible that there is in fact a decline. So we have been able to find some historical records that show us that the lower Madison in particular essentially has no more salmonflies. They used to be there, but they're not there anymore.
Wow.
We're worried that decline is going to march upstream, especially as water temperatures warm into the future. And we have some hints that they might be on the decline, especially in the reaches of the Madison here around Ennis. But there's no concrete evidence that that's happening yet. And that's why it's important to do these monitoring projects, I think, so that we have a baseline record to compare to into the future. And that's something that we're planning to continue, for as long as we can. So there is a decline. We know that for sure on the lower Madison. We think that could be happening in parts of the upper Madison here. But we need more time and data to be able to really parse out where exactly that's happening and why.
And what do you think could be, so we're talking about water temperature.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, here at the foundation, we are dedicated to, continuously trying to deliver cold, clean water back into the main stem.
Mm-hmm.
Does it really come down to water temps? Is this what we're up against?
Water temperature seems to be the most important driver of salmonfly density on the Madison River, other rivers too. But there are some studies showing that fine sediment is also a really strong driver of salmonfly numbers. It doesn't appear, at least with the data we have to date here on the Madison, that sediment is an issue for us. But because it's been identified as an issue in other systems, especially in the state of Colorado, it's something we're certainly looking at and considering. All of our information so far indicates, though, that temperature is the limiting factor here on the Madison. And there's some things that we're thinking about, if we cannot cool down the water, we're sort of constrained potentially on our ability to actually cool the water itself down. What other pieces of the ecosystem can we think about and manipulate to try to help sustain these populations into the future? And one of those things is like riparian vegetation, for example.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Okay, so we're just getting started on thinking about riparian vegetation. We do know that vegetation is important for salmonfly diets. So a big portion of a salmonfly's diet in the Madison comes from either pieces of woody debris, so the trunks or stems of trees, willows, you name it, or the leaves. We know they eat that material, so that's really important for salmonflies. We also know that when they hatch and emerge onto land during that really special time in the summer, they're using riparian habitat to crawl up, shimmy out of their exoskeleton, and then fly away as an adult so they can mate and lay their eggs. And so we're thinking about that part of it too. Like, how does riparian habitat density and type influence air temperature, which may influence the ability of salmonflies to successfully emerge?
Interesting. Okay. For the folks at home that don't know, what is riparian?
Yeah, riparian is the zone of land next to a river that's relatively flat and essentially represents the floodplain of that river. So if there's vegetation along the banks of a river, that's the riparian zone.
Perfect. And then tell me a little bit about the salmonfly itself from start to finish.
Okay, so salmonflies are special in so many ways. They're very large. They can be up to 3.5 inches long when they're moving from water onto land to transition to be an adult, so they can mate and lay their eggs. That is incredibly big for an aquatic insect. One of the biggest aquatic insects that we have in North America, and we have them right here in our home river, the Madison, which is kind of cool. So they're huge compared to other aquatic insects. They have a really long lifestyle compared to other aquatic insects too. So we think they live in the river for 3 years around here, which is kind of neat. And they also have an interesting feature, which a lot of aquatic insects have, which is that they spend time in the water. That's where they spend most of their life. For salmonflies, that's close to 3 total years. And then they emerge onto land, or they hatch out onto land and spend a very short fraction of their life on land. And like that, it's kind of incredible. They can live in the water and on land, which is really amazing. But that also means they're sensitive to conditions in both of those habitats. And one of the things that we in my lab group work on is thinking about which life stage is more sensitive, where can we apply restoration techniques that are useful for sustaining larger populations over time and things like that. The other cool thing about salmonflies is that they have a very long egg diapause, which is just before the eggs actually hatch out, they stay in the water as an egg. So they don't hatch out into little baby salmonflies for 10 months.
Wow.
So the eggs are laid like in July. They stay eggs all the way through till the next spring. And then they'll hatch out as first instar little baby salmonflies. And then they'll grow over a couple years. And then they hatch out as adults into land.
Those eggs, I imagine, they drop down into the riverbed and they get caught into the pebbles and the stones. And
yeah. We don't have a great idea, actually, of what exactly happens to the eggs or what will influence the the survival of the eggs. But you'll see salmonflies just like flying back and forth over the top of the river when they're going to drop their eggs, and they just drop an egg mass that then hits the water and sort of sinks down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then whether that stays as an egg mass or whether it disperses, we have a lot to learn about that. But somehow some of those eggs make it into little crevices. They hang out for 10 months and then they hatch out as little babies the next spring.
That's incredible. Mm-hmm. So during this 3-year period where the nymph is living in water, it's just crawling around and eating. Mm-hmm. And is it going in and out of water?
No, it only stays in the water in that stage. And just like fish, aquatic insects, including salmonflies, have gills, and they have to be in water to be able to get oxygen across those gills to survive. So during that whole time, unless there's some sort of extreme like situation where they get put into the air, they will be in the water during that whole time.
Okay.
They only come onto land to emerge as an adult when they're ready to mate.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Great. Tell me something. Are we optimistic about the future of salmonflies on the Madison?
Well, yes, I'm optimistic. I mean, it's an awesome study system. I'm so lucky to be able to work here, and really just I've appreciated sort of the engagement from the community and the interest in the scientific work, which is really fun for me and my lab group. So I'm optimistic on that side of things. We've got a lot left to learn and a lot to develop in the science. And then I think because the community is so engaged, that we should be optimistic about identifying if there are problems, which is sort of my side of things, thinking about the science, what problems do we have? If there are problems, engaging people in the community to think about what are we going to do about it. And there's so much interest in this here that I'm not worried about that part. I think we'll be able to address some of the issues when we need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where can folks go to learn? Because this is a very short discussion with you. Where can folks go to learn more about this study?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have a website that has information about sort of the basic questions that we ask and then the scientific papers that we've published. That is montana.edu/a Lindsey. And that's just my name at the end, Lindsey Albertson.